This is GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 464, part 2, entitled Society Really Needs Masculism. Carrying straight on. So, how will the rise of masculism help men? I list a few bulleted ways and then elaborate on them later. Bullet. Men will be freed from decades of manslavery by fluffies. Bullet. Men will be freed from financial massacring in the divorce courts. Bullet. Men will be freed from decades of undesired paternity thanks to the legislation of the para. Bullet. Men's gender issues will be addressed equally by parliamentary gender equality committees. Bullet. Men will have better relationships with biconscious women. Bullet. Men will feel that biconscious women understand them better. And now in more detail. Bullet. Men will be freed from decades of manslavery by fluffies. The core idea of masculism is that it's a rebellion by men against being manslaves to women, working for decades for women. In the form of a haiku-like slogan, quote, "Women have a career window of half a century, so have to fip up, or be punished by men by not getting one." End quote. This is masculism in a nutshell. Masculists see fluffydom as manslavery, and manslavery as slavery, and hence something to be hated. Masculists aim to wipe out fluffies and fluffy feminists by exterminating them slowly, by totally ignoring them, not even pumping and dumping them, thus forcing their fluffy manslaving genes to be removed from the gene pool. To masculists, manslavery is a war issue. Masculists have a particular hatred towards the fluffy feminist hypocrites who have taken over the divorce courts and made divorce so toxic for men that they have made marriage and paternity toxic for men, so that in many countries now 2/3 of young men refuse to marry, reject paternity, and live the MGTOW, that's men going their own way, lifestyle, spending their money on themselves and not on a fluffy manslaving parasite who will drag him into a fluffy feminist controlled divorce court, take his kids with a 90% probability, take his house so she can raise her kids in it, half his wealth, half his stuff, get child payments from him and often get alimony for life. Masculists want the divorce courts men fared by making custody for kids joint by default. No halving of wealth and stuff, no alimony, etc. Since masculists expect the divorce courts to see women as fips who can afford to pay for themselves and not be parasites of the money and labour of a man. Masculists see the divorce courts as reinforcers of the traditional gender roles, with the husband as the sole breadwinner and the wife as the child raiser. But women now have only 0, 1 or 2 kids on the whole, so have a career window of half a century, so are under a powerful moral obligation to fip up or be severely punished by men by not getting one. Any young woman who gets a reputation in her social circle of being a fluffy is given the kiss of death in terms of her getting a man. In a masculisted world, no young man will be prepared to be manslaved by a hated fluffy. Fluffies rot on the shelf in such a world. With nearly all women as fips, then men can share out the burden equally with women of earning the living, so are freed up to spend time and energy on non-career interests, hobbies, etc. This will be liberating for men. They will be able to be part-time MGTOWs, since the woman in their lives will be a fip who shares half the burden of earning the living. Bullet. Men will be freed from financial massacring in the divorce courts. One of the major aims of the masculists, who are a lot more politically minded than the apolitical, wimpy MGTOWs, who just quietly, passively walk away from marriage and paternity, spending their money on themselves, close brackets, is to see the divorce courts men fared by having half the judges and lawyers in the divorce courts be masculists, so that the decisions handed down in these courts are fair to men. For example, no alimony, no halving of wealth and stuff, joint custody of kids by default, etc. One of the major aims of the masculists is to create a FIP society, capital F, capital S. That is, one in which both sexes, especially girls, are socialised by parents and educated by teachers to be FIPs, and who are frightened that if they don't, they will be horribly punished by not getting a man, since in the near future nearly all men will have absorbed masculine ideas and values, who will simply spit on a fluffy, seeing her as a man-slaving parasite, who deserves to be spat at, to be punished by being forced to rot on the shelf, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and totally pariahed. To masculists, fluffy man-slavery is a war issue. Masculists aim to wipe out fluffies and the fluffy feminists who control the divorce courts. Bullet. Men will be freed from decades of undesired paternity thanks to the legislation of the para. Masculists claim that the most blatant form of sexual discrimination that exists is the fact that women have the MARA, that's maternity rejection right, yet men don't have the para, paternity rejection right. So millions of women commit the major gender crime of pill lying, telling her boyfriend/husband that she's taking the pill, but isn't, gets pregnant, then forces him to pay for decades for a kid he never wanted in the first place. This is a major and hated gender crime on the part of women against men. Masculists push for the legislation of the para, so that men also have the same legislated right to reject an unwanted pregnancy as women do. In today's world, both women and society as a whole, that is non-masculisted society, see men as cash machines to pay for women to have babies. When the masculists push hard for the legislation of the para, we will see women's true colours, that is their female psychology, their evolved expectation of men as cash machines to be sexploited by women's vaginas in exchange for men's scarce resources, especially male-hunted meat. I consider it likely that the masculist push for the para will become a bataille royale, that's a royal battle in French, as women truly wake up to the reality that if the para is passed, then that will force, capital letters, women to grow up, to FIP up, since they won't be able to parasite off the money and labour of a man anymore. They will be forced onto their own 2 feet and have to face life the way men do. This prospect terrifies millions of fluffies, so they will probably fight the para with everything they have. Bullet. Men's gender issues will be addressed equally by parliamentary gender equality committees. Another major aim of the masculists is the establishment of parliamentary gender equality committees that will consist half of female feminists and half of male masculists, who address equally both feminist and masculist issues, which is far from being the case today, since in today's world, society is so brainwashed that gender politics is synonymous with feminism. That the masculists have a major educational job ahead of them to teach society that gender politics needs to address both sexes' gender problems equally. Those monoconscious feminists who oppose this idea are labelled by the masculists MFBs, that's monoconscious feminazi bigots, for good reason. Such feminists are bigots. These gender equality committees will play a major role in the legislation of the para, since they are politicians whose job it is to make laws. The masculists want the para to become a law. Masculists want the divorce courts to be reformed. Masculists want masculist groups to be set up in every high school and campus, etc. So that society sees gender oppression as a two-way street, and that laws be made to promote these masculist goals. Bullet. Men will have better relationships with biconscious women. To masculists, biconscious women are so much nicer to be with, so masculists are much nicer to such women. For a man to be accused of being a toxic male, a rapist, etc., by an MFB, that's monoconscious feminazi bigot, is a total turn-off. So he just walks out the door and out of the MFB's life. Such women are repulsive to men, so men punish them severely, especially masculists, who see such women as hypocrites, since in masculists' eyes, women oppress men far worse than vice versa. So the complaints against men of the monoconscious feminists seem like small beer to biconscious masculists, who simply let such monoconscious feminists rot on the shelf. But with biconscious feminists, who understand perfectly what the masculists are saying, they are entirely a different kettle of fish. Such feminists are easy to get along with. They are not feminazi bitchy, and hence tend to offer masculists nicer, stabler, closer relationships. A biconscious feminist is so much nicer to be with. This is an important lesson that masculists try to teach women, especially young women. Bullet. Men will feel that biconscious women understand them better. A biconscious feminist understands what the masculists are saying, since they can read masculist books and listen/watch masculist and MGTOW videos as readily as men. So in time, they become as familiar with masculist ideas as do men, so are able to react appropriately towards masculisted men, understanding them, having an intuitive and emotional understanding of the anger and hatred that masculists express towards fluffies and fluffy feminists. Such biconscious women are female masculists, so join forces to vote with men for the men fairing of the gender laws, simply out of a humanitarian sense of justice towards men. Once a monoconscious feminist converts herself into a biconscious feminist via her exposure to masculist and MGTOW ideas, she is motivated to help men liberate themselves by collaborating with men for the creation of a fit society, for the legislation of the para, for the reform of the divorce courts, etc. Such biconscious feminists act out of humane sympathy towards men, the way millions of men are male feminists, since they see that the ways that men oppress women, for example, rape, sexual harassment, domestic violence, etc., are gender crimes against women. Similarly, biconscious feminists see that women commit massive gender crimes lasting decades against men, and agree with the masculists that such gender criminal women should be punished as well. A couple, that is, a biconscious masculist and a biconscious feminist, should get on a lot better than when the man is a biconscious masculist and the woman remains a monoconscious feminist. This latter couple is much more vulnerable because there is a real chance that the man will get fed up with her monoconscious bigotry, with the monoconscious bigotry of the woman, and just walk out on her, out of her life. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 460 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses, freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.